So I mentioned in an earlier video that I've gone down to purchasing one figure a month, which means if I want to have content, I'm going to have to revisit old figures that maybe I've talked about previously and give kind of a new spin. But in this case, I actually have a whole bunch of really, really cool figures that I never showed before. And right now, what I'm showing is Combattler V from Bandai, their Solar Chogokin line. And this is one of their full action figures. This figure was released in 2020. And it's from a Toho animation called Combattler V. And so here it is, Combattler V. I'll keep it there, and as long as it doesn't, my camera doesn't try to focus on that instead of the figure itself. Combattler V came out in 1976, produced by Toei? I don't know how to pronounce it. It's part of what's been called the Robot Romance trilogy that also included Voltus V and Tosho Daimos. Now, I know that it was the same group that produced those three. I don't know why it's called the Robot Romance trilogy. And it's also, I wouldn't really call it a trilogy because they are unrelated. They're similar, but they are unrelated. In the case of Combattler V, the V or 5, I believe I read that it's supposed to stand for victory, but it's also the Roman numeral for 5, which is sort of an indication that this is a combiner robot. And so if you think of a combiner, you could think of, say, Devastator from the Transformers, and except in this case, these are all piloted, and instead of like the Transformers, which are autonomous and self-aware robots. So it combines a jet, a crusher, tank, marine, and craft. Each one is piloted by a different pilot. There are 5 young pilots, and it uses what I've heard referred to as a Sentai team, which is a 5-member team. And I would say probably originally first appeared in 1972 with Gatchaman, which includes 2 males. One is the leader, one is second in command. Generally, the third in command is a female. Then we have a young prodigy and a heavyset guy that sometimes is a comedy relief. This exact team has been used over and over and over again, including in Voltron. And so on the cover here, we only see 2. There are 5 total members, so there's the other 3 up here. And so each one pilots one of the vehicles, and then they can operate independently or combine into Combattler V. Combattler V comes with all sorts of gimmicks, but they're in a box somewhere. So, being that this is a full action figure, it has the classic full action articulation. So it can bring its arms together, and we have some crazy range there in the back. We can lift these pieces up and have it go way out like that. So this is kind of in contrast to their Direct Classic line, which was a very the articulation was very simple. I mean, they were still gorgeous figures, and this is a gorgeous figure. Now, this figure obviously, or maybe not obviously, is not a combiner, and that is on purpose, because they want this to be as anime accurate as possible. And when you have a combiner or a transformer, there are sacrifices that have to be made, particularly since a lot of the transformations, the combining, are fantastical. Not possible given how the figure looks. So you could see here kind of the evidence of the vehicle here. It's got wheels on the bottom, and then the legs would be a vehicle, and then the arms and the chest, and then the head is the jet. So this is not Bandai's only Combattler V. So the first Combattler V Solo Chogokin figure came out in 1999, GX-03. So this is not a remake of that one because it has a different number. That's GX-03. This is GX. Let's see here. We have GX-50, which is the 10th anniversary of Combattler V, came out in 2009. 10th anniversary, that's not possible. I'm not sure what the 10th anniversary, unless, I guess it's the 10th anniversary of the figure. Okay, redesign of GX-03 with improved transformation, articulation. So those figures were able to combine. They were larger. This one, I think, is about 7 inches. Those were over 9 inches. Let's see here. GX-90, that's what we have here. And there is one that's currently out, which is the 50th anniversary of Chogokin itself, not Bandai's Solo Chogokin, but Chogokin. And that one, I think, is probably a retooling or reworking of the original GX-05 or whatever it was. GX-03? Yeah, GX-03. So that means that Combattler 3 was actually the third Solo Chogokin figure ever created. And like I said, that one does do the combining. It has the different vehicles, and then they can combine into one. And I don't have any real issue with somebody if they want to do combining. And I know for a lot of people, these FA and DC figures, it was a deal breaker that if they didn't have combining, if they didn't have the transformation. For me, I prefer them because I do like, because I'm a shelf collector, and they look more accurate, and they're also a lot less fragile. They're very solid, and you can put them into some really interesting poses. So, Combattler V, like a lot of them, like a lot of the figures, or not figures, but characters, robots, appear in like video games and stuff. But Combattler V, I don't believe ever had any other anime. It was one series, 54 episodes, and it's done. And right now, I'm finishing up the second episode. I'm going to go through all 54 episodes again. What I can tell you is from memory, and having just watched Mazinger Z, Great Mazinger again, Combattler V, I believe, is a better series, and I'm going to talk about it more eventually. This series is going to take me at least several months to get through at the rate I go at. But I remember it being all of the 3 romance trilogy, Robot Romance Trilogy series as being better than Mazinger Z. And I think that in many cases what they did was they looked at the mistakes of Mazinger Z and Great Mazinger, and particularly plot problems, and corrected them. And so I'll talk about it more either when I'm done or as I get into it. But I remember it being a pretty good series, and I think people regard the Robot Romance Trilogy as one of the better from this era, from the 1970s or early 80s. So this is GX-90. GX-90? GX-90, yes, from 2020. It's Chodonji Robo Combattler V, or in the West, I guess, Combattler V. Full action from Bandai.